over just
Okay.
behind me.
Because this stuff is pretty serious, man. You can end up stroking out because of that shit.
That knowing the UK is only going to last for 5 days, and then there's going to be rain and snow again.
Yeah,
Knowing the UK.
you sound good on D Live. I just got that.
So
Okay, so oh, that's why I can't see it. I keep using the scheduled videos option on Rumble, and it never. I keep forgetting that that's on. So every time,
even though I did stick a glass of water in this fridge just before I came on here, or before we started streaming, so
yeah.
if that cooled down a bit, and
Okay, so we've got everything up and running on Rumble. It's also running, and the audio sounds good. It's on D Live. It's going good too. I made sure that I went into Twitch and to Kick to change the name of the show so that so that, so that it does say Roger's Real-Time Talk Show event. And I just went ahead and left it up on D Live because I'm sick of dealing with D Live. I want to make sure it's running, and
okay.
and I'm I'm not gonna be bouncing in and out of Kick or Twitch right now because I'm in the middle of uploading all those videos to Rumble, and I'm short on memory space.
Hmm.
So,
Storage. I wish you stopped calling it memory, because every time you say memory, I'm thinking of RAM.
well, RAM isn't
Storage.
actually
Yeah,
RAM isn't actually where everything is stored. So,
yeah. Precisely, it's a
right.
non-volatile storage. So yeah, you mean your storage, your hard drive or your SSD or whatever.
I just should start calling it memory. My memory,
Storage,
my
storage,
my memory
storage.
is low. Storage, my storage. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're running a little bit late for anybody who's on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to the traditional, putting background music on and leaving it on so that it can annoy the hell out of Mark Edworthy.
I'm going to reduce my volume by 90%.
And we'll come back. I need to grab a smoke and get some coffee, and after that, we'll come back and we will start the show. So, um, I do have music from uh, from Dragus Production to Mark Watashik. He was
Yeah.
nice. The only problem is I haven't uploaded it yet to the Rumble Studio. It's on the OBS, but later on I can put that on there here too.
You can't just splice this in directly.
No, you have to have it uploaded like you do videos and stuff. So
Uh,
I could use the OBS as an ingest, but then that's pretty annoying too. Because
whether it's easier for you.
so I will be right back, and I will talk to you guys in a little bit.
Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, breathe the only key. Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, breathe the only key. Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, greed's the only key. Greed's the only key. Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, greed's the only key. Greed's the only key. Greed's the only key. Greed's the only key. Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, greed's the only key. Greed's the only key. Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, greed's the only key. Greed's the only key. Elon's billions fuel the flame. Red Hat has march all the same. Supreme Court plays the game. Elon's billions fuel the flame, feeding lies the chaos brings, buried under kings. Breathe the only key. flame. That hat has march all the same. Grease the board, plays the game. Green's the only key. Elon's billions fuel the flame. That has march all the same. Green board plays the game. Grease the only key. Elon's billions fuel the flame. That hat has march all the same. Supreme Court plays the game. Elon's billions fuel the flame. Feeding lies and chaos brings. Buried under kings. Money buys power, can't you see? In this land of the free, Green's the only key. Elon's billions fuel the flame. Red has march all the same. Supreme Court plays the game.
Word of smoke, tobacco, cigarettes before midnight. I coughed up along around one. I can't see a thing through my eyes that sting. I can't remember having so much fun. Well, I've never had so much fun. No, I've never had so much fun. I can't remember when I've ever had so much fun. Can't drink the water in Sydney. Can't eat the food in Japan. And you can't breathe the air in Los Angeles, but a million people think they can. And I've never had so much fun. No, I've never had so much fun. I can't remember when I've ever had so much fun. Can't drink the water in Sydney. Can't eat the food in Japan. And you can't breathe the air in Los Angeles, but a million people think they can. And I've never had so much fun. No, I've never had so much fun. I can't remember when I've ever had so much fun. These wankers filled up with hatred, why expect any less? They can't decide about genocide. I think it's time that they took a rest. And I've never had so much fun. No, I've never had so much fun. I can't remember when I've ever had so much fun. Filled up with hatred, why expect any less? They can't decide about genocide. I think it's time that they took a rest. And I've never had so much fun. No, I've never had so much fun. I can't remember when I've ever had so much fun.
good time roll. Come on, honey, let the good time roll. Good time roll. Good time roll. Harder. Let the good time roll. Let's roll. Roll. When you're dead, you're done. Let the good time roll. I said let the good time roll. I don't care if you're young or old. You ought to get together and let the good time roll. Don't sit there mumbling, talking trash.
As the moon's eclipse, I stalk the concrete veins. Cloaked in chaos, art of war, blood courses through my veins. Suns who whisper, strike like thunder, crush them where they stand. Blades auroric, I dissect the weak with bare hands. Shuriken tongues split your jug, your lyrics ricochet. Invisible like midnight fog, then poof, I'm in your face. You think you're armored, nah, I slip through cracks like smoke. One slice, your empire chokes. Checkmate, this is war I spoke. Machine, I phase through your defenses. Feed your ego to the crows, no mercy, no repentance. You'll never see me coming, just the shadow where I stood. A flicker, then your kingdom's drowned in ash and brotherhood. I am the storm in the silence, blazed in the fire of 1,000 suns. Violence, be my samurai, loyalty or demise. Cross me once, meet the reaper staring through my eyes. I cut through the night like a band. too late, you're already dead. My shadow's the last thing you'll see as I leave your head. Wars, I design a map, your doom in ink. Faint left then vanish, watch your ranks collapse, you blink. Appear weak, then break their spine, Sun Tzu's my scripture. Drip venom in your veins, let doubt fester like a stricture. Ninjato flow, split your ego into confetti. Your spit in flames, I'm the void, suffocate, no oxygen petty. Ambush in the cipher, strike from trenches of your mind. Leave your carcass as a warning, mess with gods, get blind. Cadence crash through your barricades. Turn your pride to ruin, salt the earth where your flag laid. I'm the unseen plague.
Okay, I can bet you're happy that's done, aren't you? You're gonna have to turn your audio up. It's done. It's over with. You can unmute now.
Oh no, that's better.
It's like it's done now. You can return now to sanity.
Yeah.
So the good news is that I have finally gotten everything set up. It's good to go. The audio matched up, so we've got all of that going, and it doesn't seem like there's any issues yet. So I was able to get one of the videos uploaded to Rumble. It's my gaming with Infamous video, and got that straightened out. So all I have to do is empty the recycling bin, and I'll have a little bit more information or a little bit more memory.
Right.
That's how far down I've gone. I've got 5.54 gigabytes of free storage out of 2 terabytes.
Okay.
So I'm running on the skin of my teeth. You know what I mean?
Sounds okay for what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was able to pop up X and Twitch. The videos seem to be running good on there as well, and we're good to go. So well, it looks good on Twitch so far, and then it popped up on X too. So as the show progresses, maybe those uploads will finish, and I can check the other ones to make sure too. So I'll go ahead and do a countdown and do the introduction, and we'll get on with the show. All right. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Roger's Realtime Talk Show event here on the Praetorian. I'm Roger Hanson. I will be your host. Here with me is Mark Edworthy. He's been on this show every step of the way, so he is a co-host. So I guess we're both co-hosting this show. What do you think, Mr. Robot? Don't call him Mr. Robot. What do you think, Mr. Edworthy? Now,
Yeah.
now we left off at Benjamin Constant yesterday, and I think that this is actually the perfect place for us to start because there's a lot of things that you're into that this guy was always talking about, and he was also uh, big on a lot of the ideas that you talk about too. So that's really cool. We're still going through classic liberalism and people who played a part in that. Um, we've gotten halfway through it in the first episode just before this one, and I thought it got pretty interesting. I think this one is going to be a lot better. The good part is we won't be going back over John Locke. I think we've pretty much beaten everybody over the brow with Allen so far.
Even though I can see Adam Smith in the list.
Yeah. Well, Adam Smith, he's not really as important, believe it or not, as this guy Benjamin Constant, because he is a very the stuff he could very well be up there with John Locke, to be honest with you. Okay, he came out with some pretty profound uh, concepts when it comes to liberty, and that's kind of what I wanted to start out with because of it. And then there's a lot of it that I think could relate to stuff you believe in, but also um, he mentions things that brought up things that pertain to Australia and what Mr. Robot talks about too. It just kind of sounds familiar. I'm not going to say it's the same setup, but he kind of does tap on it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Not when it comes to Australia. Like I said, on Friday, like I mentioned on Friday's stream, Australia has a reputation to be extremely apathetic when it comes to politics,
Well,
or has been known.
let's get on with this, and then you'll kind of get where I'm going with that. Because it is pretty interesting. You know, Constance, he's from France, okay, and he helped develop the political philosophy of liberalism during and after the French Revolution. Now, he advocated for constitutional monarchy, representative government, and protection of individual liberties. Now, besides that, he also made a sharp distinction between the liberty of the ancient world compared to uh, the modern world. You know what I mean? Um, Now, with the ancient concept of liberty, it emphasized on collective participation in political life, and the liberty of the moderns. Uh, Focused on the individual rights, private judgment, freedom of from interference by the state, and things of that nature. Um, Now, constant influence, his influence was really significant when it came to shaping liberal political thought in France and other parts of Europe as well. So when it comes to his ideas to his distinction between the two concepts of liberty, I went ahead and I pulled up some stuff to kind of kind of elaborate more on that. You know what I'm saying? Now, first of all, he associated all of the stuff with the old ways or definition of liberty with historical periods, different historical periods, and different political cultures that took place before this time was taking place for him. You know what I mean? So he was describing, this is what happened in this area, this is what happened in that area. He broke it all down. Um, I wanted to point that out because what I wanted to talk about was him describing the liberal of the ancients as being rooted in the life of a classic city state. Now, this would be city states like Athens or Sparta. Okay, and in those city states, freedom meant the active and direct participation of citizens in collective political affairs. Okay, that meant that they had to be active in those things. Now, individuals would often find their liberty uh, in being a part of in being a part of the sovereign decision making. You know what I mean? Like they had to come together and they had to make decisions together in order to have their individual rights. You know what I'm saying? So if they didn't participate in that, then they didn't have those same rights as what other people who were participating in the political realm had. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now usually what they did is they gathered in assemblies to vote on laws. They also did something that I actually think would be um, beneficial today, but they actually judged public officials. You know what I'm saying? So whenever they had these assemblies where people had to gather who were citizens, they actually judged the officials. Now he had a different opinion about that. He didn't think that that was healthy, but I believe that that was actually something he was wrong about. I think that would have actually been a beneficial thing to where the individuals actually had the ability to come together and vote, or not even vote, but just judge, like in a court.
When you say individuals, who are you talking about specifically? Are you talking about the so-called free men of um, the bounds on landowners, or are you talking about the people, including the commoner, the so-called riffraff?
Well, with today, I would say it would be just every individual who is actively a participant in the election
Yeah,
process.
yeah. Actually, from that point of view, from that period.
Now, from that period, they would be the people who would be considered citizens. You know what I'm saying? Who are actively a part of the political process, who actively voted. Um, During that time period, they were the ones who
So
judged.
again, goes back to the free men argument.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that we also brought up in the last episode too. Like when it comes to Greece, especially, 20% of the population in Greece was actually free citizens. You know what I mean? The rest of them were slaves. So that's a point that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to democracy.
Slaves slash indentured,
Yeah.
not necessarily just slaves per se.
Well, even but back then they didn't have words like indentured servant. You know what I'm
But
saying?
what would in reality be indentured servants?
That's what we would term it as.
Yeah.
You know. So what they basically did, they gathered in assemblies, they voted on laws, they judged public officials, and they were constantly engaged in civil responsibilities. Now, this form of liberty was built on like a small, tightly knit community, basically, um, in which the identity of the individuals was closely tied to the fate of the political collective. So basically, it would be clans. That reminds me of like a what was it? We were talking about this. Me and Tan were when I was doing that episode of Dead Popes.
I was thinking Scotland up to the Union
Yeah,
in 18th century, yeah.
yeah.
18th
Now,
century, 17th century, yeah.
Florence is what me and Tan were talking about, and how like Machiavellian. When people talk about Machiavellia, they also that like after the Roman Empire had fallen, Italy started developing its own form of governments and stuff, and they were very brutal. They usually had their families, and it got pretty rough at times, especially in Florence because they had their republic. They and it was perfectly fine for a person who had an issue with another family member to just kind of like walk up to them in public and cut their throat. You know what I mean? They could get away with it. That's kind of what that reminds me of right there. So people would break up into factions, and that's how they would judge their political parties and things of that nature according to families. So that's kind of what stands out to me. I don't know. Mob rule maybe too. That was a big thing.
I don't know if it's mob rule. There's still structure within that.
Yeah. Now, the another thing he mentioned was the ancient citizens was was free because he was part of a ruling force of the state. However, Constant argued that this form of liberty came with significant trade-offs. Now, in order to maintain collective political engagement, citizens often had to sacrifice personal independence, privacy, and individual rights. There was little tolerance for dissent or personal autonomy because the stability of the community demanded conformity and unity. Now, citizens were expected to subordinate uh, their private lives to the needs of the state. So basically, your personal life and your personal freedoms had to be sacrificed in order for the personal protection of the whole state. You know what I'm saying? Um,
You could argue the same about modern monarchies.
well,
Yeah.
that's probably where he uh, was because he agreed with the monarchy, but he also agreed with constitutional government and liberal classic liberalism. You know,
So the ideal form of British governance,
pretty
as
much.
in, yeah,
That's what I was saying. I mean, I knew you would enjoy this because this actually relates more to England than it would even here in the United States.
UK, yeah.
You know, we don't allow such foolishness in the United States.
You don't know what you're missing. Like I said the other day about the 4th of July, you're always welcome back.
Now that was just uncalled for. Now, the in extreme cases, like what was seen in Sparta, the public good took such procedure that every detail of private life was regulated, leaving room uh, leaving room for personal choice or freedom of thought. You know, leaving no or little room for personal choice or freedom of thought. So these people were basically regulating every single thing that was going on in your private life, details and everything. So it, if you broke out of if you went out of line with anything that was a part of that whole situation, then you'd probably get in some deep shit. Hold on for a second. But yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
I was just thinking that way. On your last note, isn't that so? Isn't that sort of true about so-called celebrity culture these days?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about like the excessive censorship that's being placed on everybody these days, and like how people are just falling in line with this political correctness and stuff. You know
I'm
what
not
I
sure
mean?
why everybody's falling in line. Um,
Well, the majority of people, it
oh,
seems, are.
okay.
You
Yeah,
know, you know what I mean? And I don't want to get into the whole crazy politics on this show. You know what I mean? But I
well,
do.
well, we are talking about politics after all.
But I mean, it is right there in your face. You know what I mean? And he brings up a lot of more key issues that really sticks out to you when it comes to a lot of the issues we have today. I really believe he was probably he was probably pulling out uh, a lot of information that he knew was most likely going to end up happening in the future with the with the way people's with the way people were organizing and putting liberalism, classic
The
liberal.
prophet, the prophet Constantine.
You know,
Yeah,
he was. I mean, he was right on the nose about a lot of this stuff. I mean, um, now he goes on to say there was little tolerance for dissent or personal autonomy. That's what really tripped me out when he says dissent and personal autonomy. You know what I mean? Like, don't go against the grain and don't worry about your own personal individual freaking rights and privileges or anything like that because everybody's important. You know what I mean?
just been overly evident in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Um, in extreme cases, such as Sparta, the public good took such precedence that every detail of private life was regulated, leaving little room for personal choice or freedom of thought. And the whole thought police thing sticks out when I heard that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Because that goes into what people now like to define as conspiracy. You know what I mean? Because they came out with that one movie, 1980. What was it, 1982 or 84? 1984.
Again, I do not like the modern usage of the word conspiracy.
Yeah.
Conspiracy is to means to conspire.
Hmm.
Just because it's a theory doesn't mean that people are not out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, in modern commercial societies, such as those emerging in Europe during his lifetime, liberty meant protection from interference, the right to hold private opinions, enjoy personal property, practice religion freely, and engage in economic activities without arbitrary restrictions. Now, this is where I think that a lot of the stuff that not only in classic liberalism but in all forms of government that's taking place, I believe that the economic parts of what people have wanted has actually just been a disappointment. You know what I mean? Especially when they call or they talk about free and open trade. I just the free markets, things of that nature.
This is where I have a problem with. Sure, I call myself a classical liberal, but I also understand that there is a purpose to regulation, at least a minimum amount of regulation. I mean, as a good example, the US idea about advertising pharmaceuticals freely compared to the British idea of, well, yeah, not advertising pharmaceuticals freely for the purpose of protection or protecting citizens.
Now, see his idea for, and when he referred to modern individuals, he was talking about people of his time period
Mm.
in classic liberalism. Now, in his interpretation for liberty, for modern individuals, liberty was less about governing others and more about being left in peace. Now,
Mm.
here in the United States, that's the one thing I do have to say about the libertarians. They still do hold that idea, but they're they're not really they're not a group that you would call classic liberals. You know what I'm saying? Because they get too caught up in the economics of things. And for me personally, I don't.
Okay, I'm thinking of this on the part of. I was thinking that you are incorrect because libertarianism, modern form, makes me think of a sort of communist left wing, for lack of a better word, socialism. But I also thought about the concept from the Tea Party concept, which is somewhat different from that.
Yeah, with libertarian, when you hear about the Tea Party, don't believe that they're libertarians, because they're not. Okay, they're very very extreme. Once we get through this, I'd like to go into radicalism and kind of explain that more, which I was talking about. And like, you'll see a lot of the stuff going on today that is directly related to that. Like, you'll see where radicalism has just kind of gone overboard, and it's not just from people who are Democrats or Labor, and it's also from people who are supposedly conservatives. You know what I'm saying?
But arguably, anything could be extreme. Too much socialism on the left or right could be considered as well. My arguments about extremist socialism, but also too much um, liberalism on steroids is could be
That,
a problem as
that's
well.
well, see, liberalism on steroids is the actual definition of radicals. There was
Mm.
actually a group of people that weren't socialists. They weren't liberals, classic liberalists. They were radicals. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a distinct group of people all throughout this time period that were actually straight up called radicals. It was a movement, and that's something that seems to have been lost in time too, because people don't realize that. Like there was the liberals, the classic liberals, and then there was the radicals, and then there was the conservatives. You know what I mean? So there was a distinct group of people called radicals, and now all of a sudden everybody is using the terminology radicals, and the rest of the people who are supposed to be conservatives and liberals and all of these cool socialist names, you know, that they don't understand what's being said. They're interpreting it wrong, you know. Um, and
Yeah, the term radical is trained with the term radicalism,
right,
which in this context are two different things.
right. It's well, I mean, not really. To be honest, there are things like whenever I mention Andrew Jackson. Okay, Andrew Jackson actually did help the United States out a lot, but he was a radical. Okay, and his radicalism was a lot more mild than what it is today, but it was nonetheless it was he was a radical. Um,
As I pointed out, there is a level degree to all of this stuff.
mhm.
Yeah.
Now, for the modern citizen during his time, they expected government to provide legal security, and this is where you're talking about with regulations,
Hmm.
but not to like direct the moral, religious, or intellectual life of the people. Leave that alone. Okay, um, that's
Mhm.
that's the way he felt about it. Um, you you can put regulations into place to provide legal security, but he didn't feel that you should interfere with the individual's morals, their religious, or their intellectual life.
Yeah, which is becoming a big question, especially in the UK, especially at the moment, especially with stories that have been released just over the last couple of days in relation to Islamophobia and stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Now, with the way he interpreted it, now in this in this conception, freedom resided in limits placed on the state rather than in participation in its rules. Okay, so uh, the individual didn't have to participate. You know what I'm saying? And this is where the things about what Mr. Robot was saying about Australia stuck out to me, where it's mandatory there for him to vote, because if he doesn't vote, he gets fined for it.
yeah, but it's not. He could always spoil his vote. He doesn't actually have to vote for any individual party. He could just spoil his paper at the end of the day, which is in effect the same. Well, arguably the same thing.
But still, the law that says you must vote or get fined is
That's
still,
not necessary. Would you argue that's a bad thing?
yes, that's a horrible thing. That's exactly what this man right here is discussing.
Even if you've got the opportunity to spoil your vote
Yeah, the,
and
the
therefore decline to vote for any individual
it,
party or person.
the bad part isn't the fact that it's in place, it's the fact that this law was allowed to be put in place. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, overreach of government is what that is when it comes to constitutional government, and and classic liberalism, which is what all of these constitutional governments was actually drawn up for.
I'm just thinking on the US concept of power by the people, for the people, with the people's consent, whatever it is. In that case, in that context, would it not make sense for each individual to be, I don't want to say forced, or, well, in reality, forced to vote
I,
if you uphold the concept of power by the people, for the people?
I believe that according to what I've learned when it comes to liberalism, it's like that is our responsibility, but it is not the state. It's not the state's place to force me to do it. Okay.
So maybe society as a whole. I'm not going to say your next door neighbour will come and knock on your door on voting day and say, "Have you voted yet? If not, why not?"
Well, see, what I'm talking about here is the same concept of why people are confused about the IRS. Okay, the
Yeah,
Internal Revenue Service. Other than it being a non-governmental organization, they claim that this is a voluntary tax. Okay, now what they're saying there is it's voluntary in the respect that you don't have to pay your taxes. Now, the consequences that come after that, that's not up to you. That's up to them to impose. But you don't have to. Whereas before, in the olden days, the tax man came a knocking. You know what I mean? They knocked on your door.
isn't that the same thing as I don't know, use some rudimentary argument. You have the choice of murdering somebody.
But yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
That's There you go. You have the choice of murdering somebody or not murdering somebody.
but if you do,
Hmm. And
yeah,
that also goes into other issues concerning war. You know what I mean? Like being like England participated in servitude for a long time, where you were forced into the navy or the military, and then that ended up coming over here to the United States. Here recently, within the last 50 years, we stopped doing that. But
I think it's happened all through all cultures. And when was the last time? I think it was in the 1950s that conscription ended in the UK.
Mhm.
52, maybe a bit later.
Yeah, and it really falls into there. That's what a lot of this concept really comes down to is when it comes down to that. You have a right to either vote or you don't have to vote. You know what I mean? It's your choice. Um,
But
Now,
arguably, you've got a right to participate in your society, in your community, or you don't have, or you have the right not to participate in your society, stroke community.
right. And that's where my issue was when it came to Australia, because they take away that right to not participate. You know what I mean? Um, and
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm kind of curious about that too, because I'm wondering which other colonies actually have that law put in place. And I have to admit that during this time period, it would have been uh, Cromwell who was putting that law into place. So,
I've
so
got a small question. Is it a right or is it a responsibility to participate in your society?
it's both,
So, in that case, it's your responsibility to vote.
right? But you don't have to. You have the
So,
choice,
we're laying on your responsibilities.
right? See, every single person, every single person has the right to make the choice here in the United States. We have a right to make a choice. If we want to vote, we're actually doing what our is a responsible citizen's duty. But if we don't want to, it's okay. We don't have to vote. We're not going to be penalized for that. You know what I mean?
Reminds me, I was watching an old, I think it was 1940s, 1950s film the other day, all about police and criminal mafia or something, New York mafia or something, Chicago mafia. And there was a line in there about the responsibility of aiding your local police force. And is it the duty of a citizen to aid the police force?
Well, you
So
can
yeah,
get
similar to the concept.
that's actually something that's a good thing to bring up too, because there's actually been cases where people have been they've gotten in trouble for just flagrantly not helping out when it comes to not just police but also like emergency units. You know what I mean? Um, for nurses, they can literally lose their job if they drive by an accident and don't stop to ask if they need help. They
Yeah,
can.
there was a case. I don't think it actually ever went to court, but there was a case a couple of years ago in the UK where one of the sort of insufferable protest organisations, I think was Just Stop Oil, that actually superglued themselves to a main road and stopped ambulances from being able to go back and forward. And I think there was a case where there was a mother that had to give birth in an ambulance because of this situation. So, in relation to supporting and aiding the local authorities.
Yeah. Now, Constant understood that modern societies to him would have been during his time period, they were large and complex, and he also understood that they could no longer function as a direct democracy. You know what I mean? The sheer scale of diversity of modern nations made continuous civil participation impractical. You know what I mean?
And remember, this is at the time where what we would now know as modern nations, was just becoming a thing, or was just being born. I mean, at this time, the United States, as we know it now, wasn't a entity. Germany, as we know, of the federal state of Germany, wasn't an entity. The UK, as in England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, wasn't an entity.
Well, as you guys were actually during this time period, you guys were actually in your Civil War.
Okay, yeah.
John Locke didn't return until after the Civil War when he felt that it was safe because the royals were wanting him dead. He had to move from place to place out of fear because they were accusing him of an assassination attempt.
Scotland wasn't a part of the Union at the time.
It wasn't.
No, yeah, that's 18. Yeah, that's later. Yeah, the actual Scottish Union.
But even like right here, I think that this was actually a good, maybe bad thing because I understand where he's coming from about the the diversity that was going on at the time, and everybody was really big onto the whole classic liberalism at the time, about constitutional government, and everybody had their own opinions and their own thoughts on how these governments should be formed. I do understand that concept, but what I do also disagree with about that is the fact that as time went on, these governments also decided that it was a good practice to make it to where people didn't everybody didn't have the right to frickin' say things. You know what I mean? They made it to where like here we have the electorate. You know what I mean? The electorate, which is set up and designed to where if you're an idiot, your voice isn't going to be heard. You know what I mean? It's going to be
But if you're an idiot, you still got the right to voice your opinion.
not
Or
really.
if you're anybody irrelevant, if you're an idiot or a genius, you still got the right. And especially now with modern technology, the internet, it's much more easier. It's much more evident.
Well, the internet doesn't allow you to vote though. You can
Yeah,
talk.
but you can express your opinion. Well, that's a very tricky question at this present
Yeah,
moment. But in theory, you can express your opinion.
yeah, you can in theory, but
Yeah.
it's just
So, so I was going to say, Mr. Starmer, I'm going to have a knock on the door by my local police officer just later.
now now he went on to say that participation was impractical, and he said he brought up the example that individuals are too occupied with work, family, commerce, and culture to attend daily political assemblies. Which, in that aspect, I do think is ridiculous. You know what I mean? You shouldn't freaking force people to show up for assemblies and do all that stuff. If they want to go on their own and they have free time, then that's fine.
I disagree. If let's say you're a member of parliament,
No, just
uh,
individuals though, just
I,
regular
oh,
individuals.
okay, in that case, yeah, because you elect somebody to speak on your behalf.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
And that was the argument that he brought up. Because like modern liberty relied on representation, institutions, rule of law, and constitutional protections that safeguard your personal freedom. Um, Now, it required mechanisms like elected legislatures, independent courts, and civil rights rather than constant popular involvement in governance. You know, that's all fine and dandy too, but another thing I want to point out too is the fact that a lot of people today don't understand that when you vote somebody into office, that is also a form of surrendering certain freedoms. Okay, so when you vote that person into office, he is speaking for you. Okay,
Mm.
so when he goes into office, he is speaking to you, and if you have grievances against what's going on in politics and everything, it is important that you contact your representative, even if you voted for him or you didn't vote for him. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. He's a phone call away. And if you have a representative who's not wanting to take your phone call, then the next time it's time to vote, you need to make sure that that person's not voted in again.
Or more likely these days, email or postal. Yeah. Again, I'm not sure how easy it is to actually phone the let's say a UK MP's office these days.
Well, that's something you need to find out. And I
But
would,
email or postal,
I would say
or when they do this local surgeries. which
It's
isn't
cool.
all that often. But
It's cool and it's hip now to do the emails and the internet stuff, but I still suggest phone calls. It shows the character of the person. You know what I'm saying? If
postal letter, postal mail,
well,
a good old handwritten letter.
good handwritten letter is good too. It's very good. Phone call or a letter. Keep in contact with them if you have these grievances and you want your representative to do things, because you need to understand that when you vote for this person, you're giving up certain rights. And you're because you're allowing this man or woman to represent you in government. So that's the reason why that's important. Um, Instead of you having to go to assemblies and do all these things, you're allowing this person to do those jobs for you.
But of course, every MP in Western world have the local surgeries. Even your Senate members will have their own surgeries within your state, as an example.
Now you're using the term surgery. That's a very important thing for you.
Okay, local meetings where you can actually go to your politician and say, I'm not happy with this, sometimes on a one-to-one level.
Now, see, we don't do that stuff.
Don't you? How do you communicate? If
They
you can only communicate through phone, email, or letter.
they may at some point like do rallies and things like that, but it's usually
Okay, but that's not just really a personal communication.
no. Now they mostly when politicians these days here in the United States uh, do like rallies and speeches and stuff, it's got something to do with trying to get back into office the following election. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. So there is a further form of separation between your politicians and the people.
Right, and they've done that on purpose.
Mm.
They've created things that make it harder, or that make it to where the government or the federal government is separated from the state, and then like the state is separated from the individual. They do that on purpose to where they can stifle the
Why,
process.
why talk to the people? Why talk to those little peasants over there?
Right, exactly. And they've been doing that now for quite a while. I've already mentioned about the Department of Justice. Um,
Mm.
I believe that was the biggest mistake the United States ever did, was create the Department of Justice, because it took the rights of the state away from uh, from them when it came to the Supreme Court. Uh,
Yeah, and I have the opposite argument. This is why I think using the UK model, the UK form of Supreme Court is not suitable for purpose, which was actually created by Tony Blair, and also the European Court of Human Rights is again not fit for purpose, because that in fact the European Court of Human Rights is a foreign power. Um, Making judgments on UK legislation.
right.
And yeah, but the UK Supreme Court in the UK model is not suitable.
Okay, so now we get to the part that you really enjoy. Now there are consequences with the stuff that I was talking about. Like you have the right, or it's your responsibility to vote. Okay, but you don't have to. That's where we get into it. And the cool part about this guy is Constant actually even said there is consequences to that. He was a very smart man. Okay, and he made a warning about this. He said that modern liberty um, brought its own dangers. It brought its own dangers. These aren't old ones, but it actually created its own dangers because modern citizens uh, were more inclined to pursue private interests and less engaged in public life. They might grow indifference to politics. So that's just I don't they I want nothing to do with that. You know what I mean? They're just a bunch of big mouth politicians, and I just don't want nothing to
That's
do
why
with
I hear in this country all the time. Yeah,
it. You
I
know,
get I hear that from many people. Yeah.
you know, uh, and that's where you were talking about being apathetic.
Mm.
Uh, and people don't allow that with this kind of apathy. It allows governments to accumulate power slowly and undermine individual rights, and that's without any resistance whatsoever.
Yeah, which takes us back to the Australian model. If the concept of Australians being overly apathetic is true, then wouldn't it make sense for voting to be enforced?
And that's the consequence of their apathy.
Mm.
It's not like the government said, well, these guys are all apathetic. We're just going to make them vote. What that they Australians became lazy when it came to voting. They didn't want anything to do with it, and that by not taking part in government, they actually allowed the government to gain more power, and that's the result. They ended up being forced to go to the voting boxes because they didn't.
I don't know. It sounds a bit of a chicken and egg sort of thing. That's
Exactly.
trying to do then. Yeah.
It's really that's what I was thinking whenever I was saying that just now. I was like, it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Um,
Mm.
Now, Constant emphasized the need for vigilance and balance. He believed that while ancient liberty was no longer viable as a model, some aspects of civil engagement still had to be preserved to prevent this despotism. Despotism is basically what we're talking about right here. People who are despots. They're just vagabonds who sit around eating freaking chickens all day, scrambled eggs, like Mr. Robot.
I don't know. I haven't had scrambled eggs in ages, actually. but, yeah. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Now he went on after that to say citizens need to remain informed, demand accountability, and ensure that political institutions respect their rights. And right there with the whole forcing people to vote, that's where they crossed the line. And like, just because freaking they were apathetic and didn't care doesn't mean that freaking they shouldn't say, go to the voting booths, speak out, and say, look, this is unconstitutional, it needs to go. You know what I mean? I would do it if I was an Australian. I wouldn't put up with that. To be honest with you, that's really crossing the line. And then calling
Mm,
themselves a constitutional government.
I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I can see the sense. I can see the logic behind forcing people to vote,
That's why I made
even if they do just spoil the paper.
that,
Um,
that's why I made a couple notes um, for you. I made two of them because I knew that you were going to agree with that and think that was okay. So I made a few more extra notes for you to listen to and and get your take on. I'm going to do
I
them
mean,
both.
I'm not saying that I've always voted. I have missed elections myself, but in theory, yeah.
Now, this is something that Constant argued. He argued that confusing these two concepts of liberty could lead to dangerous results. He criticized those who tried to revive ancient ideas of collective rule in modern settings, warning that such efforts often resulted in authoritarianism. When modern states attempt to enforce moral or political unity or demanded excessive participation and sacrifice, they risk trampling the very liberties that defined modern life. He pointed out to the excess of revolutionary France, where appeals to ancient civic virtue had led to terror, repression, and tyranny. What do you got to say?
So in that point, is conscription would conscription be considered as within that point?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it would most likely. And then like when he brings France up and the terror time of terror, we were talking about this sort of last year or last week, and I talked about that with the uh, with the freaking whole thing about the time of terror in France, and that's that kind of goes into what he's talking about. You know what I mean? Whenever,
How much conscription happened during Napoleon's time?
oh God, well, you
Yeah.
Napoleon, I believe, was the one who brought an end to the time of terror, wasn't he?
Well, technically, it was just after. He's that's an arguable point.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know, like they ended up like I mentioned last week, they
He
ended up.
sort of unified the yeah. He sort of reunified the country.
Mhm. And I mean, they literally had to write a second constitution because the first one failed. And it happened here too. Like we had the Articles of Confederation
Yeah.
and we did the Constitution. But
I think there's a third constitution. Wasn't there a third constitution during Napoleon's second time?
well, I mean, I can't. I'm usually. Well, let me put it to you this way: I'm being really nice to French people right now because we're focusing on Europe. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I, I'm not really wanting to say horrible things that are gonna make people upset. French people are good people too, even though they smell.
Actually, no. French. Yeah, those lovely foggies. I just quickly had a quick search, and it seems like French has had 15 constitutions throughout history, starting with the Constitution of 1791, and the current constitution, which established the Fifth Republic, was adopted in 1958.
Oh my God! So they're just
Yeah.
rewriting one constitution
Yeah,
after another
yeah.
one.
1791, 1793, 95, 99, 1802, and the list carries on. 1814, 1830, 1848, 1852, 1875, 1940, 1946, and then 1958.
Man, makes me feel so good to be an American. I wanna just sing that song. It's good
Which
to
one?
be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Okay, I was thinking Yankee Doodle, but that's me.
Well, I mean, for me, I think that kind of falls on what I was talking to you about before about a codified constitution and why that's important. That that is insane.
Mm.
That really is. That's insane. So they're running around just changing their constitution on a whim.
Yeah, remember in the 1940s you had the Vichy regime, which actually splits France into two different territories, isn't it? You had southern France, which were supporters of the German regime, the which was known as the Vichy's, and then you had the northern France, which was part of technically part of the Allies.
Okay, so that that that, that's really really amazing, and we've got it on our second stream, so I think that is cool.
Actually, I was correct. I was incorrect. 1852 was the Second Empire under Napoleon III, not Napoleon II.
Okay, now my second note about Benjamin Constant is this: he drew a sharp line between the liberty of the ancients, which emphasized direct political participation and collective authority, and the liberty of the moderns, which centered on individual rights and freedom of state intrusion. He regarded the modern concept of liberty as more appropriate for large pluralistic societies, but warned that it required institutional safeguards and public engagement to survive. His work laid a foundation for later liberal thought. Now, that part I don't agree with, because I think that these institutional safeguards have gotten really, really excessive, especially when you look at Europe and you look at, well, England. Look at all of these quote unquote safeguards, how much it's ballooned up and gotten.
We question if there is any safeguards. I mean, going back to the Krango concept, which was again heavily promoted by Blairism, and in fact, since the new Labour government came into power, I think there's been I did see a report a couple of weeks ago that suggested there's been something like 60 new Krangos, so NGOs, being formed in the UK within the last, well, not even a year yet,
Mhm.
almost a year.
So now, um, what's your thought on all of this stuff with Benjamin Constant? Yeah, what we've just gone over, because I've finally gotten through all the information that I.
Within what concept? But I think I've really answered your question already. Yeah, within what?
Well, I mean everything. I mean, what's your final thoughts about the man? I mean, because I personally think that you would actually enjoy a lot of the stuff that he believes in.
Again, I haven't done very much research on this person, his philosophies, but I don't know. I think I've really answered in a roundabout way, your question. A lot of these, a lot of the concepts that you've explained, gone over, I agree with.
Well, with me, one thing that really stands out was he really did have he had foresight. This man knew, he knew what was going to take place. It just seems that he knew, you know what I mean? Like he really checked out what was being written and what people were saying, and he knew what was going to happen. You know, I mean, a lot of this stuff, all the way down to the being apathetic. You know what I mean? He knew. So that's something that really stuck out to me. I believe that that is a very very important thing to really think about. Um, and I would put him right up there with John Locke. He really knew what he was talking about. He explained.
Oh, we are talking about 100 years after Lock and Smith, aren't we?
Mm,
Roughly, roughly.
uh, yeah, maybe. Now
Mm.
Smith and Hume,
And oh, the French.
and then Immanuel Kant.
No, I
They
was thinking the other one. Begins with R.
Rousseau.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a because Locksmith and Rousseau were about the same time period.
Now Rousseau,
Oh, yeah, all the
this
same time period.
Rousseau, believe it or not, my
You
view.
actually, yeah, you didn't actually add him to the list.
That's for a reason. That's for a
Yeah.
reason. I believe that where John Locke was the founder of the liberal movement, Rousseau, and nobody said this, but I personally believe he was the founder of what would later become radicalism or the radicals. His ideas were very, very radical, and I want to bring up later some things when it comes to his arguments with Voltaire
Mm.
concerning child rearing, and that is where you start getting into you start
Actually,
getting it.
yeah, sorry, I was just thinking Voltaire, again, the same time period as
Yes,
all these three other people. Yeah, yeah. So,
Voltaire.
yeah, Constant was about 100 years after,
Yeah,
roughly. Mm.
yeah. But see, even during that time period, though, freaking things haven't gone like extremely crazy, like it has now. You know what I mean? Like he he knew that this stuff was in the
I don't
works.
know, English Revolution? Well, English Civil War, French Revolution? If they're not too crazy, if they're not things that you would call crazy,
You do remember last year, right?
in
The
what
the
sense?
conversation we had concerning England, like shit got crazy for you guys in the 1900s, man. That's where
Mm.
everything
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? You had cruelty, you had tyranny, you had all this stuff back then, which everybody at that time period was used to as the norm. But then all of a sudden,
You could argue any nation
right,
did.
right,
All nations did. US, yeah.
you know, but and we'll get that we'll get there too here when it comes to Europe as well. But like I said, are multiple countries that are involved here. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that we don't just jump in on
Yeah,
one.
go over the grounds.
You know what I
Ground.
mean? But I think whenever we do get to that point when it comes to radicalism, I want to start it out with Rousseau because there are a lot of things about what happened between Rousseau and Voltaire which will kind of open people's eyes up when it comes to Voltaire's criticisms of Rousseau. You know what I mean? And I
Mm.
mentioned it before about people today they just use words and they don't even know what they mean, and they run around saying I'm a realist, I'm a realist, and nobody really knows what that means. And also I'm going to bring up the question, an honest question: how how good was the Age of Enlightenment? Let's take a closer look at that and see what it was really about and what it was involving. You know what I mean? This Age of Enlightenment. Um,
You mean the Reformation,
no, the Age of Enlightenment.
which is a defined age of enlightenment. I mean, there's a defined Reformation, but is that a natural defined age of enlightenment?
I wouldn't say it's defined. I would say that people have said that the Age of
I
Enlightenment,
mean, arguably, are we not going through an age of enlightenment now?
not really. I would say it was an age of regression where people are being,
Well, I think really that's for historians in the future to discuss on being in the middle of the current events. You can't really
Control.
be overly objective in that context.
Right. You know, that we we've done so well with this one, and it's covered a lot that I think we should hold off on David Hume for
Okay.
episode 3, because this actually was a good episode, and I didn't think that we would actually be as engaged on Benjamin Constant as much as what we were. It's
Well,
almost,
as you said, there is a lot of um, correlation between what he was talking about and what's happening at this present moment.
yeah, it's in your face. I mean, no, anybody who's watching this who can't admit to that there is a lot going on today that this man talked about has got problems. I mean, seriously, you know.
Or don't understand the more historical, doesn't fully understand principles.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, we're even explaining this stuff as we go. You know what I mean? It's not like we're holding back information, and I mean, we're
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if somebody just started watching this episode halfway through, then why not?
and I do suggest that if anybody is watching these episodes, go and check out our first episode for this season, which was
Or
last.
even started watching our last season. When was it? It was about a
Yeah,
year ago. Yeah.
yeah. Now this one is concerning Europe. The season last year was England. Now, if you want to go all the way back to the first season, that's American. That's everything concerning America, and I don't think we really did that great of a job of it now that I look back, because like we've gone a lot deeper with what's,
Again, when you say America, you mean US.
well, yeah,
Just
well,
to be more specific, yeah. Maybe America is a big continent, or
yeah.
the Americas are a big continent.
We were debating on doing Canada, but everybody, it was unanimous that Canada really isn't something that anybody's interested
I
in.
don't know. Canada's a interesting one, like Australia, big, much more interesting than Australia because they've got direct US influence as well as direct Commonwealth British influence. Even though, arguably, in the last 40 years, because of things like TV and media, all the Western world has been affected by US culture, that's to say.
Well, I wouldn't say that we've been affected by it, or you guys have been affected by it. I think,
Again, how many times have you heard me talk about watching growing up watching American
movies.
TV, Cheers, MASH, Sesame Street?
Oh no, don't be mentioning Sesame Street. You know we've gone over the limit when Mark Edwards starts talking about Sesame Street. So
But yeah, that US culture has seeped into um, other countries, let's just say.
okay. So what I can do is let's stop it here, and then next time when we come back, we will discuss David Hume's, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant, Wilhelm von Humboldt, and Frederick Bastiat. Now these are, well, Alexis de Tocqueville, or Tocqueville.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think actually it might be sensible to stretch them over 2 episodes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
other than Adam Smith and Immanuel Kant, and David Humes. The rest of them are later on. Like we're gonna be these guys are gonna be a part of like the 19th century. Um, they're not
Okay.
they're not actually a part of the actual time period that Canton, Humes, and
We are just coming into the industrial revolution now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So after we do that, then I want to get into medievalism. Start talking about Jacques Rousseau. Uh,
Uh,
Voltaire is going to be brought back up because we mentioned him last week. And then I want to start discussing realism and what realism really means. Maybe go into the age of romanticism. And
I had a thought earlier. Considering we're talking about all these political philosophies, maybe one philosophy and a very sort of modern philosophy that we are forgetting about is the sort of technocratic or oligarch philosophy. The sort of yeah, the NGOs, the trust the experts, the sort of much
yes,
more, which we are seeing with things like the creation of the WEF and the European Union, and
yes.
um, yeah,
Now, believe it or not, this actually goes into that because whenever I discuss realism and the age of or the time of romanticism, the age of romanticism, those actually lead into what actually becomes socialism and the argument against socialism. Um,
you're using socialism as in the broad term socialism rather than any individual political philosophy.
Well, see, we call it socialism now, but with socialism, it changes names. It changed names over time. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't always considered socialism. It was called rationalism. You know,
Okay.
to be a realist. You know, that was the earlier forms of what we call socialism now. And I want to go through that and kind of
Again, this jumps back into the nurture nature argument of Smith and
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yes. Now we're on the same. We're on the same
page, so to
page.
speak.
Yeah. There you go. So yeah, that's basically what I want to the direction I want to go with that, so that we can kind of make a clearer understanding of this because I think it's important for people today to actually hear this stuff. You know, because we're losing a lot of our history. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to politics. You got people out there just talking crazy stuff and have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. You know,
Mm,
and
indeed.
need more people that are stepping up and saying, "Look, this is what happened. This is what this means." You know, this is what it doesn't mean. And I think we're doing a good job of it. So with that,
Yeah.
before we go, let everybody know your socials.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry, let me just get a glass of water. Uh, yeah, that's better. Yeah. I can easily be found at minds.com under the username Medworthy.
And you can find me at minds.com as well as Roger underscore Hansen. I'm also Roger underscore Hansen at DLive, I believe. Now I'm on Twitch as well at Infamous 1969. And on X, I am Roger Hansen at ROGLOL 1973. Now, with YouTube and Rumble, I am the Praetorian on YouTube, though, I'm the Praetorian at the Praetorian 5222. Now on Rumble, I am the Praetorian, but I don't think I have an at on there. So you can find this channel on Rumble and YouTube. Now, besides that, like I said, I'm on Twitch, but I'm also on Kick. And on Kick, you can find me at Roger Hanson. Um, so I believe that's all of them. Did I mention D Live, Mark?
No, but you said YouTube I've got it the Praetorian. It is at the Praetorian 5222.
Yeah, there you go. At the Praetorian
But I
5.
don't think you mentioned D Live.
Okay, now at D Live, I'm Roger _ Hanson. So, if you guys like this episode, you like what you've seen and heard, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Feel free to leave comments because we do appreciate the comments. I always bring it up, and I always tell everybody if you leave a comment, I will respond to it, and hopefully somebody will leave it because we want to talk to you. So, with that,
And Roger you can always pass me the comment if it's
right,
appropriate.
right. If you guys have a question for Mark Edworthy, then ask him the question, and I will make sure that he gets it, and vice versa. Now, if he sees something, he does that for me too. So.
Indeed.
Um, so, with that being said, I'd like to say thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a good night, evening, morning, whatever time of day it is, because we do have people from different parts of the world who watch our show. Mark Edworthy's in England, I'm in the United States, so that kind of gives you an idea. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the show. Do you have anything you want to say, Mark?
Just interesting show. Again, goodbye.
All right. So here we go. Talk to you guys later.